Yeah, so here we are, ladies and gentlemen, after an extraordinary amount of fiddling and messing around, and I've even misplaced the book. However, I've found another book, because I want to talk about Mark chapter 9. I've already been to a church this morning in Jordanville, which is a suburb in Melbourne, Victoria. So I've already been over this gospel a couple of times this morning, and it's a very difficult gospel to present in a church that's got people of all ages. It's got people of all occupations, different migrant backgrounds. It was challenging because you listen to this. If I can find the place where he in fact lays it on pretty thick. John spoke up. Teacher, we saw a man using your name to expel demons and we stopped him because he wasn't in our group. Now how's that for an ambit bid? Jesus wasn't pleased. Not because of those blokes who were using his name, but they weren't part of the insiders. He was displeased with his disciples. He said, don't stop him. No one can use my name to do something good and powerful and in the next breath cut me down. If he's not an enemy, he's an ally. Why, anyone by just giving you a cup of water in my name is on our side. Count on it that God will notice. Now, I mean, gee, that's pretty... I don't know that you can start a church or a denomination or a religion with that kind of statement. I mean, I love it. But I'm just wondering how you could possibly get people to come together, especially in a hierarchic church, and try to explain that the outsiders may well be the insiders. Whereas we who are in the church building or in the ashram or in the mosque or wherever we may be, have been taught that we are the ones on the inside and we've got the inside running. Whereas once his disciples, after only a year or two, had got the impression that they had the inside running, spiritually and religiously, and they dare to broach the subject with Jesus, and then Jesus gives it to them straight out, doesn't he? Don't stop him. In other words, wherever good is being done, that's where God is being respected. Wherever. And the church I was in, I made the point, it's almost unfair, but I had to as a preacher. I'm saying, look, here we are in a church, and here we are reading this reading, and here I am preaching about it, and down the road is say, a sports club meeting, and discussing the Swans' victory against the Hawks, which was a game of football played yesterday in Melbourne before 99,000 people. And they may have been trying to get out of that review of the game some spiritual insight, like the Swans were not meant to play like that. They should be a bit more dedicated and a bit more disciplined, but they play a bit of a game that is labelled ugly. How could they possibly win the premiership like that? So that might be going on. Now, out of that group of people discussing the football, they may well be groups of people who have stuck together over a football season. They've got up early in the morning, they've polished boots, they've cleaned football jumpers, they've done all kinds of things to keep young men off the streets, and yet they haven't been to church. And my point in the church was, look, those people down the street may well be closer to doing a God thing, because they're doing a good thing, than we are up in the church, listening to the word, and then saying our prayers, and maybe expressing some general intention that we should do good things. But to me, it's, look, this ambit bid by Jesus to try to break through organised religion and respected religious rituals and moralising. It's breathtaking and it's stunning. And I think that's what the world needs now. In fact, we've got in Melbourne this very morning, there's a march in a part of Melbourne called Brunswick. A young woman was murdered, allegedly, in that suburb, allegedly. Her body was found certainly miles away, but however, a man has been arrested, and the whole of Brunswick and the whole of Melbourne, and indeed probably a lot of Australia, is expressing grief, at her death, and concern that this kind of thing can happen in what we call a civilised society. That gathering of people, a secular gathering, mind you, leaving flowers on the footpath and expressing itself in all kinds of secular humanist ways, I'm saying, may well be closer to the God way of seeing things than people meeting in churches and religious centres up and down the length of Sydney Road, Brunswick. I mean, it's a vexed question as far as we church officials are concerned, but really there seems to be a groundswell of a requirement that our religions should in fact review their performance as parts of a neighbourhood and admit to shortcomings in interacting with all kinds of people who are outside of the religious tent, so to speak. Because I mean, this challenge of Jesus, and indeed there was a more graphic one in the first reading from today, which comes from the book of Numbers, I think, which is Torah, what we call the Old Testament, where once again two men young men came into Moses and said, look, we're meeting, we Orthodox believers are meeting in a tent in the desert, but further down in the camp, they said, there's other young men meeting and they're using your name, Moses, and they're discussing serious matters and making decisions about how to do good things. Please tell us to go back and tell them to stop, because they're not on the list. And Moses, once again, like Jesus, showed shock and horror to think that somebody belonging to his group would think that way. So he told them, in fact, just leave them alone. Because if they're trying to do good things, and if they're in fact using my name, I am perfectly satisfied that they're on the right track. So that's the message for today, and I do hope that this little production today has worked, because it involves the technical assistance from the comrade Mark, who's overseas but is in touch by telephone, and it required me, 78 years of age, fussing around and pushing the wrong buttons and doing everything. But if it's come off, ladies and gentlemen, well then it's a miracle. So thanks for being with us this morning, and I hope to be back with you next Sunday.